Good morning and welcome to Hacking HR's August series. We are kicking off today with our very first session, HR Leaders as Trailblazers, Understanding HR's Evolving Role in Organizational Resilience and Success. I am your host and moderator, Lauren Lefkowitz. I'm an executive coach, and I believe that fine is a trap. And I work with executives and leaders to help them get out of the trap of being fine, set boundaries, recover from burnout, and figure out how they want things to go. I'm so excited to be with my panelists today, and we are just going to jump right in. So I'd love to welcome them to the stage, and let's get started. Good morning, panelists. Welcome in. I'm so glad to have you here with me. I will be in a free-form mode today. Since there are four of us, it should be pretty easy to check in with each other. I'm going to ask you to all stay on mute until you're speaking, just so that we can eliminate any background noise, and then just come off mute, look at each other's mute buttons, and answer the questions as they come. So I'd like to actually start with introductions, and if we can just go around, and if you could tell us who you are, where you work, what you do, and why this topic is exciting for you.
Okay, I'll start. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shaniqua Albert. So happy to be here today. I work for KNZ Solutions. We are a software solution and architect technology group based out of Vienna, Virginia. And the reason why I'm excited to be here today is because this is a topic. I've been an HR professional for many decades, and this is the gift that keeps on giving. So when it comes to resiliency, this is like my jam. So thank you for having me today.
I'll go next. Good morning, everyone, or for wherever you may be joining us. I hope you're having a great day. My name is Carol Cooley, and I'm a Chief People Officer based in Denver, Colorado. And, when I think about this topic, it really is, near and dear to my heart. I think if there's something that the last, 4 to 5 years have taught all of us who have been HR professionals, at any point in our career, it's that resilience is so important, especially as we go through many, I hate to use the word, but unprecedented changes throughout throughout our organizations and throughout, society as a whole. So I think one of the things that I'm most excited about is really helping organizations think about how to position their people to be resilient in the face of dynamic changes.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody who have joined. So my name is Srividya, and I'm from India. I work for a company called Petrus Technologies. So we are into industrial IoT. And why this topic is very near and dear to me, like how both of the leaders were there on the call, just told that resilience is something which is very close. And to be part of HR in the last 18 years, I think the one skill which I have adapted myself is to be resilient to change, right? Because we have seen a lot of changes in the HR practices itself, and a lot of changes across the processes and policies as well. So I think combating all that, combating to the social and economical changes, I think resilience is something which is very, very dear to my heart. So this is more relevant to me as well. So thank you so much.
Amazing. What I'd like to start with is asking you all, what does organizational resilience mean? It's a very sort of lingo-y term. So when you think of organizational resilience and success, what does that mean to you?
Okay, so if I could just jump in, so I think resilience is more emotional, right? Like when we discuss about resilience, it's more about the emotional perspective. But from the organization perspective, I think resilience is the capacity to thrive rather than survive in turbulence. So that's my take on organizational resilience is all about. So it's about giving the psychological safety for an employee in an organization to succeed and overcome. So that's my take on resilience.
Yeah, from my perspective, I always think about as an HR professional, we're always balancing kind of the needs of the organization and the needs of the individuals within it. So when I think about organizational resilience, I think about both, that from an individual perspective as well as from the organizational perspective. So how do we think about the organization being able to adapt to and deal with and thrive during dynamic changing conditions? And then how do we also set people in those organizations up for success in meeting those changes in whether it's skills that are required or aptitudes or behaviors or changes in the roles that they're actually occupying within that organization. So to me, it's about managing both ends of the spectrum and everything in the middle, to make sure it's good for the organization and good for the people that inhabit it.
Yes, I think you both brought up some really great points. I think about when it comes to resiliency, one, being prepared for not when, but the what if, but when it's going to happen. So with resiliency for me, it means meeting organizations where I happen to be, meeting them where they are today, understanding that there may be some strengths and weaknesses that may either lend itself to that moment in time or areas of attention that need to be improved for the next time that it happens. So this involves holistically looking at the organization from the front end to the back end and understand everything in between so that you are prepared for those dynamic times that Carol just talked about.
Thank you all. I always think it's helpful to just define what we're talking about as we start talking about it. So thank you for coming in with those perspectives. We know, because we've been in HR, that COVID especially made us come to new levels of resilience as individual HR professionals. What do you think that the shift from the COVID pandemic did for organizations in terms of resilience?
Yeah, I'll start with this conversation. So COVID again was an unprecedented time that I don't think anyone could have prepared for. Even the best organizations that thought they had it all together probably missed a couple of things. So for me, my experience with that was looking at our operations standpoint. We were not prepared, unfortunately, to work from home. We have essential personnel, and everyone became an essential personnel during that time. So for me, it was being able to adapt from a paper system, if you were doing paper, when it came to like managing files, to how do we pivot really fast to being able to work from home. So making sure that everyone had what they needed to work from home, making sure that insurance coverages, had riders in place to cover this unprecedented time. For me, this was an area of concern because we had retail employees that we still wanted to make sure that they were nurtured and cared for, and they had no concerns relative to income, insurance coverage, and also making sure that we could still perform operations. So for me, COVID was a very trying time. I was in a benefits role at that time, and we were global. And it happened to be during the time when we were looking at renewals. And due to the morbidity rate for COVID, it was very hard to get insured, especially when it came to life insurance. So this was an area where I had to be very strategic and think outside of the box in terms of how do we make sure that the entire operation is covered, safe, secure, and that we can still stand up and perform.
Yeah, Shaniqua, I'm glad you brought that up. I was a chief people officer for an organization at the time that COVID happened that sounded very similar. We had frontline folks who were doing providing security services in hospital settings and government building settings. And so our personnel, a large 90% of our workforce was hourly. And they were in those frontline jobs, and they didn't have the opportunity to step away because they were, in fact, essential personnel. And in fact, right on the front lines. By being in hospitals, they were, dealing with patients that were coming in for COVID and things like that. So, and at that time, we were also trying to procure for them just basic PPE, personal protective equipment, and that wasn't available. So one of the things that I found was really an opportunity for us as a leadership team is to think about that in a different way. So, if we weren't able to procure PPE because it wasn't available for anyone else, what could we then do to help secure and provide some measure of safety for our teammates who are out there on the front lines? So we did things like implementing a PTO donation program so that anyone who had a ill family member or became ill themselves was able to continue to get a paycheck. We moved to weekly payroll, so again, that they were going to have that pay in hand quickly as possible. So to me, the organizational resilience was really about thinking about what do the people in the organization need? How can we continue to serve our customers? And how do we implement things that are going to shore up and make it safer and more secure for our teammates across the country?
Yeah. Probably I would like to, like mention, in fact, during COVID is when I think we all have learned so many lessons. In fact, like how we were not prepared yet for such a situation. So in fact, I think post COVID is when we had a lot of learning. I would say, in fact, from a reactive mode to a proactive mode, right? Because I think, of course, nobody expected such a pandemic to happen and hit the whole world, and we were actually panicked, and we had no clue where we were running for, and especially on the vaccines, we don't know what to take, what not to take, the side effects. I think we all were globally confused as to whether we are doing the right thing at the right time. So that was something which was, I think, which was actually making all of us in a jiffy. But at the same time, I would say that the post COVID learnings that I think we all have had is something which is very, very important for all of us to actually practice. And that is the actual resilient learning that we have learned, that it's okay to slow down and look at the human factor in the HR, I would say, right? Because only post COVID, I would say, though we have a lot of insurance benefits and everything for the associates in our organization, I think the well-being as a topic, right, has actually flashed globally. I think post the pandemic, I think we all have to agree that somewhere, like we have learned the lesson in a very wrong way, rather, like losing lives and actually losing many things that we possess. But still, I think that's one message which I feel that's a very big learning that we all have had. So employee well-being and mental health, the physical health, that is something which has got more prominence, and even today I think we all are putting a lot of efforts to ensure that our employees are actually safe and well in the organization. So that's one thing which actually makes a lot of sense to this topic, I would say, today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all of your insights. So COVID sort of threw us into this like, we have to, right, situation. And now that we're in, I hate to call it a post-COVID world because COVID is still, of course, around. But in this sort of post launch of the pandemic, now that the dust of that has settled a bit, and we have opportunity to look at organizational resilience and success in a proactive way instead of in a reactive way. And to your point, we have an opportunity to look at the well-being, right? Not just the things we have to do, the things we have to attract candidates, to keep employees, retained and that sort of thing. But we actually have an opportunity now to look forward. What do you think is the opportunity as an HR leader for us to do in looking forward?
That's a really great question. And I think it's one of the unique things I think about being an HR professional is you kind of see the organization through the lens of the people. And I think that additional perspective can be very powerful in thinking through what are the implications of business decisions being made? So, if I think about even just the last 18 months or so with the widespread tech layoffs, I think HR professionals have an opportunity to think about things like workforce planning in a proactive way, anticipating business changes, and preparing the organization to help do some scenario planning if and when, Shaniqua said, when things change. And I think because of our unique perspective in dealing with people in the organization, that can really help create a different lens by which we see those business decisions and those trade-offs. So I think, HR leaders are uniquely positioned to be able to help their organizations think through the implications of some of their decision making and some of their business strategy decisions.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think COVID was the beginning of a perfect storm of events that was happening globally. So, to kind of piggyback off what Carol was saying was just regarding the takeaways from it. And people don't like for me to say this, but I'm a people over profit person. I believe that, like the mantra, happy wife, happy life, same thing with employees. So for me, someone that was once an employee and now is in a leadership position, I don't forget where I came from. And I always have that nostalgia hat when it comes to making sure that people are feeling valued, seen, heard. And I think COVID was a good call out for that because you started to recognize that some people, when they came to work, it satisfies both personal and professional areas of their life. And we started to think about, well, who's checking on this person? So for me, this was an opportunity to really work with emerging leaders to make sure that they had the skill set to feel comfortable to do check-ins. This was also a great time to implement now what's become the latest DEI plus B, which is the belonging, and making sure that people felt as though that they were not forgotten and that they were not just seen as people that were to move the business forward, but we actually took care of the person. And this goes back to the well-being part and making sure that the people were aware of the resources that they had relative to their own personal well-being, physical well-being, and also for their family as well. And also relative to if you were a parent, having to balance that work-life balance of having to tend to your family at home, tend to your job, tend to yourself, all under one roof between 8 to 12 hours a day. So there were a lot of different takeaways relative, to COVID, but making sure that, people felt valued, seen, and heard was important to me at that time as a takeaway for resiliency.
Yes, I think probably my answer would be a mixture of both, right? Because we have discussed beyond the actual expectation of the question. So the point is like for me, post COVID, how the organization can actually align themselves is to be more people centric, right? I mean, I think HR can enable meaningful relationships at work. It's very important for them to ensure that the employees or the associates get what they want. I mean, be it investing on their learning, be it investing on their skilling, and making them understand, what is the vision of the organization and what are we running for, right? And that's more important for them to get aligned because for them, if there is no understanding of what's happening in the organization, then I don't think we are going to like nowhere like come up with any success as a result. So it's very important for us to realign ourselves to the vision of the organization, make the employees understand what are we doing and what's their contribution to the organization, invest on their physical well-being also apart from the career progression. I think all these things will slowly like bring us back to the momentum, and I think we are good to go from there.
We've got some great comments coming in on the chat, and if you're listening in, you're in our audience today, please feel free to put questions, comments in the chat. A lot of comments about creating initiatives, focusing on the people. COVID-19 significantly impacting how we focus on the people. And what I'm seeing in the comments is very HR centric, which, like, of course, we're all HR professionals, right? But how do we take the 100% of the pressure off of ourselves as HR professionals and outflow to other leaders in the organization, to other members of the organization, so that HR is not the catch-all for building organizational resilience?
Well, I feel HR's role is, I mean, today, if should be more of an organizational influencer, because so there's no point in like taking trainings or sessions. I think we need to start influencing, especially the leaders of the organization, and make them understand that that the people would observe things more rather than practicing things, right? So they learn from what they see. So it's very important for the leaders to stand up and walk the talk, so that it gets cascaded to the next level. And of course the top down approach do work well, because all the employees are going to look up to their immediate supervisors and managers. So I think HR should play that role and ensure that we spread the same message and we are one organization, so we speak the same language. I think that's more important in this context.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there needs to be an alignment with leadership first, from an understanding of we all share the responsibility, right? Of, caring for our groups. This comes back to, what we were talking about relative to being in alignment, understanding what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and being transparent. If anything I learned from COVID was transparency is key. People want the truth, good, bad, or ugly. And that's one of the things that I implore our leaders to do, to be transparent, meet your staff, meet your group where they are today, understand that they have questions, be able to address those questions, and make sure that they're all in alignment with what their role is. A lot of people know that they're here, but how does their role connect to meeting organizational goals and shifts and being resilient? Because we talked about being resilient as leaders, but what does that mean to our staff as well? Making sure that we're all in alignment with moving the needle forward.
Yeah, really great insight. Sorry, Carol, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think I really do agree. I think a lot of it comes down to communication and transparency. And part of what I think HR can continue to do is reinforce that role, because I see it as being a really critical role for leaders and managers to understand that they have a very critical role in how communication flows through an organization. And I think it's one of those things that unless you talk about it, out front and affirmatively, it can really get swept under the rug, and that can create a lot of friction within an organization. One thing I think that I've found particularly effective that has kind of come out of the COVID pandemic has been more of a sense of community within HR. Prior to that, part of my experience had been, you're in an organization and you've got your head down and you're busy doing things for the organization, and you don't have an opportunity to share across organizations. And I think in the midst of us all trying to figure out what was unfigure outable during COVID, we really created a better sense of community across HR. And we were talking and sharing ideas and saying, well, what are you doing? What are your return to work policies? And I think in a post-COVID world, there's still that sense of community that's been created. And I think that's one way that we have really helped strengthen resilience within our own HR community, at the same time that we're trying to do that within our own organizations.
Amazing points. And so sorry, Carol, that I missed you on this round. So thank you for jumping in. I appreciate it. That's a sign of resilience that we're all willing to just jump in. We have a comment from. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I did want to add one thing before we leave this topic.
Yeah.
One of the takeaways too was that the things that were implemented during COVID, I'm.
Oh, Shaniqua, I think you've frozen. Hopefully we'll get you back.
So, and the
Shaniqua?
organization going forward. So for me, my best practice is to leaders out there that put different policies into place, such as extended leave, caregiver leave, et cetera, to keep those in place until you never know when you might need them again.
Okay. Shaniqua, I hope you can hear me. Your screen has frozen, so hopefully your internet
I can
connection.
hear you now.
Okay,
Am I back?
great.
Sorry.
You're back, and we heard most of what you said. I think we missed about a half of a sentence, but your video is frozen. So hopefully you'll come back on video as well. We have a great comment in from our audience from Sanjukta. It is important to position this as not an HR initiative, but a company initiative. We have to move away from messages from HR, not us versus them. So how have you seen that shift for you as an HR leader? In this post-COVID world where we have become influencers, we have become leaders in the organization, we have stepped away from, in some senses being seen as the doer and the payroll runner and all of those kinds of things. Our heads are up. We're not heads down on our desk anymore. What have you seen shifting, and what kinds of tools have you put into place to allow you to be seen as a partner to the organization and not HR versus the rest of the organization?
I think for me, part of coming out of COVID and working with the leadership team is really helping them understand and take accountability for sharing those messages. As I talked about a little bit earlier, really helping leaders see that their communication to the rest of the organization and their level of transparency was really critical to sharing those messages. I was lucky enough to work with some leaders who were very much invested in sharing those messages. And they wanted to talk about, not only what was good for our employees, but how it was impacting our business. We had a lot of frontline employees, as I mentioned, during COVID. And so I think it was important for us to talk to them in a way that they felt like we were acknowledging their concerns for having to be, in front of customers. And I think that having the leadership team that was willing and able to share those messages and provide updates and talk about what was going on, not just in our business, but with our people, was really helpful to positioning us and the organization as a caring employer, and also one that wanted to engage in that dialogue with employees. So it wasn't just a one-way, top-down type of communication, but we were really seeking answers and wanting input from our employees as well about what was going to be best for them and what things, what suggestions did they have for us as leaders in the organization to really try and make their life better at this difficult time.
Um, Typically, I think I would, completely agree with Carol because, like this COVID actually brought all of us together, probably the HRs and the business leaders together. And that has actually helped us streamline many things, be it the business strategy and the HR strategy going in sync together because things doesn't work in different, folds, right? So this has actually enabled us to partner closely with the business leadership team, I would say. And this has actually helped I think almost all the organizations to grow together as an organization, in the path of success. For example, like if from the HR standpoint, if we have certain initiatives that we would like to roll it out for the employees, at the same time we have a different business agenda. I think that doesn't work well, right? So it has to go hand in hand. I think this collaborative effort, which has started from COVID, I think till date, that has only helped us to actually understand business more, the business priorities and the organization priorities, the HR priorities, the people priorities. I think all these things are interlinked. I think this understanding of the link that we have today is certainly a very big thing for all of us in the industry, I would say. And this has only helped us to align the business strategy, HR strategy, the culture that we are looking out for, and also the talent pool that we are looking out for, right? Because if all these things doesn't go well, I think we are missing out some way or the other. I think this is one key thing that's a very good outcome from this COVID, I would say.
Shaniqua, I know we lost you for a moment. Glad you're back. We're just talking about how you've integrated yourself as a leader, as an influencer, instead of sort of the sort of past version of us as head down HR. Okay, we might have lost. Oh, are you with us? Your internet seems a little funny.
And yeah, this is terrible. My apologies to the group. I'm here. I'm hearing what you're saying, but I'm here.
Okay, great. I'm sorry. The internet is funny, and Mercury is in retrograde, and there's always something, right? But we're resilient. So great example of resilience. Having to leave, come back. You're here, and we're glad you're here. What kinds of trends are you seeing that you're seeing in your industry, in the HR world, that you're implementing, that you're bringing into your workplace to help with the future of organizational resilience?
I'm within the tech industry, so unfortunately, there are still many layoffs that are occurring. So for me, I'm very protective of my family. So having gone through 2 layoffs through tech myself, I'm a very strong advocate of leveraging our internal resources before I call going shopping.
I think we've lost Shaniqua again. Hopefully she will come back. But if one of you would like to come in.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off of what Shaniqua was talking about, I think one of the trends that I'm definitely mindful of as an HR practitioner, because I've seen the impact of it on people's lives, is really just good workforce planning and thinking about that as a stepping stone before you're going to get to layoffs. I think we talked a little bit, in the previous question about organizational influence. And I think, it's easy for leaders to want to push that button that says, we've got costs to cut, and this is a way that we can do that really quickly, and we can get to our budget targets. And I've always been an advocate of what are the other steps that we can take in advance of that? Are there voluntary measures that we could do? And so I think part of that, building on that additional influence that we have within the organization, is really thinking through what are those other options. And just because it's something that other companies are jumping on the bandwagon of doing layoffs doesn't necessarily mean that that is what our organization needs to do. So I really like to make sure that as much as we're looking at what can we bring into the organization and apply, and how can that help us make a difference, I think well-being we've talked about that as well. That's one of the things that brought into a lot of organizations, different practices around that. But what are the trends that are going out there in the marketplace that might backfire, that might create more problems for us than they would help solve? So I think it's a balancing act. Again, don't jump on the bandwagon of, hey, this is a new trendy thing out there in the marketplace, but really being thoughtful about what practices are going to be create that level of resiliency within your organization, and are going to meet your employees where they're at.
Yeah, actually, talking about the emerging trends and all, on also on the layoffs, like when you take both these into context, I think I would like to, like touch upon a point which, like we had also been following, because I'm also into the tech industry. So we all know, the highs and lows of tech industry as well. So I think one thing that I personally feel that all the organizations also recently are putting their efforts on is to bring in learning organization, like upskilling, reskilling the associates in the organization, to keep themselves abreast of what's happening instead of keeping layoffs as an option, right? Because employees are loyal to the organization. They have put their heart and soul in the times of need. So I don't think it's fair from our side to actually, like, let them go without even giving them a chance, right? So that's something which has actually proven successful. Yes, of course, we do have success and failures when we are going to attempt for new things in the organization, but it's absolutely fine because we are giving the associates a ray of hope that we are there for them. And I think that is what is all which is much more important than the paychecks, because for them, the job security or the insecurity which they have gets cut off. I think they'll be psychologically well, first of all, to even agree to this point and put their efforts, put their mind in the right thing. I think that is one thing which I personally feel which is more successful also in organizations where they invest people, where they invest on learning for people. That's one thing that we need to be mindful of. And second thing, I would say that HR also have to adapt to the changes in the market. So we need to stay relevant to what's happening in the market, right? I mean, there are a lot of things which is available, but we need to understand and advise the organization on what is right for our kind of an organization, because what works in an ABC company doesn't work for me, and my size is small, large. So obviously, going with a trend doesn't work well until unless you understand your employee, your line of business, and you understand what had worked fine before and what will work for the future. I think that understanding of the business, our employees, and that's more important. And only then I would say we can take a call, and that would also be a very very integral part of an HR's role, to be an advisor as well as advocate, like how just Carol just mentioned. So that's my take.
Thank you so much. And we've got a couple of comments about HR no longer being the police, and HR being more involved in the business and in the industry. And here in this room, in this virtual room, we are all strategic leaders who clearly have been able to impact our organizations. Out there in the HR universe, there are people who are still struggling with that, who are still seen as the company police, who are still seen as the people who should just put their head down and do the work. What kinds of strategies have you used, or would you advise HR professionals to use to really get that integration going and to really get that strategic business partnership going if they're still struggling with it? If COVID didn't snap its fingers for them and help them, come into, if they weren't already, because a lot of us were already, but if they weren't already strategic partners, what advice would you give to people who are sitting here and going, oh, I wish it could be like that for me?
I like to start by just really being curious, and asking questions. And I think that ability to ask good questions with your business leaders gives you a kind of a distinct opportunity to really take it to the next level. One of my favorite questions is, what problem are we trying to solve? I think oftentimes HR is a place where people come to, and in some cases, they already have a solution or a certain approach in mind. And they'll come and say, "Hey, Carol, I need a training program that does X, Y, and Z." And if I take a step back and ask them why is this the preferred approach? Why this type of training? That kind of question of the 5 different whys, and really start to engage and be curious and have that conversation with your business leaders. Find out where their pain points are, and that can give you some insight and ability to then be able to influence some of those things and be seen as someone who you can come to and brainstorm with, as a starting point, versus someone that you're coming to and just saying, please go execute on this. So I think that's one strategy that I've employed that I found to be very powerful, and gets the conversation started in a way that can be very non-threatening for that business leader.
Yeah, actually, I completely agree, Carol. In fact, like HRs are no more an executor, right? I mean, not just the doers. I think if we, like bring a shift in our mindset that we are not here to just execute things, we are no more a support function. I would say supporting or enabling things. We are not into that business anymore. When we claim ourselves as business partners, and when we say that we would like to partner with you, we are partnering with you in good and bad, right? So which means that and that will happen only when HRs come up to the business leader and understand their issues from the bottom up. I mean, try helping them like solve their issues by understanding the root cause of it. I think we need to somewhere also give them the belief, the trust that we have to, that we are here to support them, right? Because predominantly what actually happens in a business scenario is we have these delivery heads and leaders at one level. So we are HR leaders at another level. So we have the employee group at another level. So what literally happens is, so everybody will have a different perception about HR. Like, what we saw, HRs are either a police or HRs are either friend. So their perspective also changes as they grow the ladder, right? So but if you see, the majority of people below the leadership level are going to look at as these like discipline monkers, and who are looking out for you to like be on time, do the work on time. We are here for time sheets, we are here to do the performance appraisal. I mean, end of the day, we need to make people understand that we are a very open organization, and we don't see levels. To us, a junior employee and the leader are one and the same, right? So this takes a lot of time and effort for any HR organization to do a deep dive into every level and make people understand. It's not going to be a one day's task at all. But how do we do it? But how do we do it? It's only how you exhibit. It's only how you talk, how you communicate, how you listen to them. We all speak more about empathy now. Let's exhibit empathy. Let's show it to them. Only if you start behaving the way you want others to behave with you, that's when things will get cascaded, right? I mean, we say treat people the way you would like to be treated. It's as simple as that. So HR need not be called as police down the lane if we all together start practicing what we preach, and also ensure that we ask intelligent questions to people. I mean, end of the day, people also are looking out for someone to ask sensible questions to them. Let us also understand business. Let's also make them understand what HR is all about, because HR is no rocket science, right? I mean, it's very simple and straightforward. We don't confuse people, but end of the day, things also get massaged by the time the policies get traveled from top down to the lower level as well. So I think we will have to make things more transparent. And as we speak, it's very easy to tell transparent, but how far and how less is something that only we know. But having said that, I think if we make the communication channel simple and easy for all of us, I think HR will have a very, very different face down the lane.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those insights. And I want to point to two of the insights that you two brought up. Carol, that you brought up why, asking the question why, and the 5 whys. And if you all don't know what the 5 whys is, it's just asking why over and over until you get an answer. Like a 3-year-old who wants to know all about the world, right? And mom says you can't have candy, and the kid asks why 100 times. And but as adults, we have, of course, more complex brains. But when you ask why and you really dig in, not only are you seen as a partner, but you get to the real answer, right? And you get to not the Band-Aid answer, not the let's patch this up until we can get to it, but the real strategic answer. And Srividya, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, so please correct me if I'm wrong. What I loved about what you said was that shift from support to partner, that shift from, come in, sort of the approach of like, I will give you a straight answer to your question. I will provide you with the, piece of administrative information that you need. But instead, pointing to Carol's why and your strategic partnership, we are partners to the business. the organization does not have its sense of resilience without our insight, our empathy, our strategy, our input, and our seat at the table. So the really, really amazing insights. What I'd love to ask next is if you can give an example, a really specific example of something that was happening in your organization where you stepped in as the HR strategic partner and solved and helped build resilience in the organization. Let's try to not have a COVID example because I think we all have the COVID examples. But if you can think of a specific time where you stepped in with your strategic insights and said, here's how I can contribute, how did you add to the resilience of the organization?
I've got an example that comes to mind. And I think part of adding strategic value to the organization starts with being able to help measure some of those things. But I'm very much a proponent of just because you can doesn't mean you should. There are lots of different metrics, and they may not have the right line of sight to what really drives the most strategic business objectives. And so the example that I'm thinking about was a time when we were doing a lot of measurement, and we were looking at things like retention. We were looking at our time to fill for our positions because there was a direct correlation between our ability as a business to earn revenue and did we have people in those frontline positions to be able to us for us to bill and service our clients. And so we were measuring all of these different, hiring metrics and turnover metrics and things like that. And really I had to strip away a little bit of that noise because as we started asking, well, what's going to have the biggest impact? What's going to help us the most here? Obviously, we want to hire and we want to get people into those jobs right away. Obviously, we want to retain them and we want to make it a great workplace for them. But we found that the biggest predictor of our ability to hire quickly and retain those individuals was what I call time to start. So we had a long credentialing process in our onboarding process between background checks and vaccinations and other things. It just made it a very laborious and long process. And what we found is with those frontline jobs, if they could get another job in another establishment, whether that was hospitality or retail or food service, and they could start earning a paycheck, they would be more likely to take that job versus ours because they had to wait for that onboarding process to go through. So one of the problems that I solved was trying to narrow down that time to start window. And by really focusing on what can we do to streamline the onboarding process, to bring people on board, do some basic training with them as they're going through the onboarding process before we would deploy them to the client locations, we found that those two actions together really helped us with that time to start metric. And it ultimately improved our ability to staff positions at our client locations, gain revenue as the organization, and then ultimately create a better experience for our newly hired employees because they had the benefit of coming into our office and going through some of that training as they were, my words, sitting on the bench, waiting to get all of their credentials to go to the client locations. So it solved a problem for the business and it solved a problem for that employee.
Okay, so we went into an issue, probably the aftermath of hiring, people post COVID, because we were, compelled to put people to encourage people to work from home because none of us were prepared to bring our associates back to work, right? So what is one problem that I think most of the companies also faced during that time was the nascent attrition that I think we all had within 3 months and 6 months of their joining the company, because they are switching jobs during COVID, so they'll have no clue about what the new organization is all about. So they were just kind of shopping around and trying to, like find new jobs. And so sometimes if things doesn't work well, they also quit the organization in couple of months and then they switch jobs. So and as HRs, I think we also didn't have any control on these newbies in the organization because they have just joined the company. right? So I think that was one very big issue that in fact in one of the organizations where I had worked, we had a very big challenge to attract and retain people for 6 months. So we had a lot of attrition within the first 6 months. So we had to sit and find, what we can do different, because we are able to attract people. Now, some of they are joining the company as well. So we were not sure about what's not working fine. And we are also put in a state where we cannot bring them to work to collaborate or look what's available in the office premises. So I think one thing that we did was we jumped into these AI tools, like which were also very very famous during that time, because we had to engage with people as well. I think that is one thing that had actually given us a lot of insights. I would say the HR technology aspect, right, which we were not that savvy before COVID. I think that is one thing that actually we all learned through the times. I mean, now we have so much more in the market. Like, we have come to a stage of generative AI as well as our work buddy today. But then back at that time, I would say 2 3 years before, I think none of us were using AI for engagement extensively like the way we use today, right? I mean, the online engagement or talking to the people, understanding the first 1 week at work, first 30 days at work, 60 days at work, what's working fine. Did you receive your probably your joining kit? So starting from that till, are you happy? Are you safe? Is your family safe? I think it was very difficult for one HR to reach out to all 1,000 employees at different locations, right? I mean, implementing these HR tech strategies into the system has actually helped the organization way too far. And for me personally, I think this has actually helped us out in keeping in touch with the employees uh, on a day-to-day basis, and this has actually helped us solve a major issue of the nascent attrition.
Thank you for those really specific examples, because I think we talk often so globally and so sort of high level, that it's great to hear these really specific ways that you've impacted your organization. So this topic has been HR leaders as trailblazers, understanding our role as evolving to build a resilient organization. What kind of advice would you give to those folks who are in that evolution and they're scared? I don't know how to be strategic. I don't know what it means to be strategic. I don't know what they're expecting of me. I don't have all of the answers and I feel like I'm supposed to. What kind of advice would you give to those who are in that evolution?
For me, I think it's just being willing to try something new, try a different approach, ask a few questions, set up time with leaders in the organization, set up time and talk with employees in the organization, get their perspective, find out what their pain points are, and think about ways in which you can continue to help them. I think it just starts with it. I'll go back to something I said earlier. For me, it starts with being curious, wanting to know more about the business and finding those people within the organization who are willing and able to give you some time and share their insights with you. I've always found that that's a really great starting point, is finding those advocates or the people that are at least friendlies. I'll use that term. In the organization that you can talk to and start to learn more about the business. I think that sets a really strong foundation. Then I'm also a big proponent of pilot projects. So if you're not in a position to launch something new for the entire organization, find pockets of the organization who might be willing to try something new with you and use them as a test case. Find out what works, iterate, and then you can improve upon it and continue to build small wins within the organization, and you can build people who are receptive to trying new things, and find out where those people are in the organization and who's going to help you be an ally and test for those types of things. You'd be surprised when you ask and engage people in finding the solutions, just how willing they are to provide support to you.
Yes. probably my advice, if somebody is going to start something new at a strategic level, I think I would ask them to, first of all, observe what's happening in the organization. I think it's more or less resonates with what Carol says. Like, you just go and speak to people to understand them, right? I think it's better to observe what's happening in the organization and try to find the pain points in the organization. Probably we can start off with something which is a low hanging fruit, like which we have, where we can contribute, where we feel that we are strong enough to address the issue, or provide a solution, or create an initiative, right? I think that is something which is very important, instead of taking something which is very gigantic for the organization. And also, it is very, very important for us to understand and decode the purpose why we are going to do something. Because when people come and talk to you, you will have to be answerable to let them understand why you're going to do certain things, and what is the impact, what is the result. Because any initiative without a purpose, I don't think anyone can be successful. And to work with employees and people and leaders, I think we are much more responsible enough to give them the answer, what we are looking out for as an objective of whatever initiative that we do. So be observant, learn what's happening in the organization, and carve out your programs. Let it be piecemeal, small, small activities to start off. I'm sure people also understand that HRs are also humans, and to err is human. So sometimes, not at the cost of anything though, but it is very important for us to also, like, position ourselves in such a way that we are trying it out and we will be successful. We hope to be successful. That could be certain mistakes. Please do help me. I would like to learn and partner with you. So if we take it that way, I'm sure max 1 or 2 years, I think things will get into shape, and I'm sure we will be, successful in whatever line of HR that we would like to move.
Such amazing insights. And I think I heard in both of your responses, in pieces, you don't have to know everything to be strategic. You don't have to have all of the answers. You don't have to be at the top of the mountain telling everybody how things are and how they need to be. You are responsible for being a strategic partner. That means asking good questions. That means thinking. That means participating in the conversations. That means sharing ideas, looking at the risks of those ideas, and really being the partner to the business. Srividya and Carol, I want to thank you so much. And Shaniqua, who unfortunately we lost to internet challenges, who also gave us amazing, amazing insights today. It's been such a pleasure to be in the room with you. And for those of you who are in the comments, who are in the audience, please connect with these speakers and with on LinkedIn. We are community, and we are not community without each other. So thank you again. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.